those of you who have been watching the program for years and years and years, or listening to the program for years, know that I have covered extensively. A lot of this is in my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting and The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, both those books. But basically, that Dwight Eisenhower is arguably the last Republican president who actually believed in democracy, the rule of law, and that government should do what the people want. I think you could probably build a case that Jerry Ford might have been okay with that. But, Richard Nixon rose, first of all, in 1960, he tried to beat John Kennedy. He was vice president at the time, by conspiring with the mafia and the CIA to assassinate Castro. He thought that because Kennedy's main thing that he was beating Nixon up on was that he had let Cuba go communist in 1959 when he was vice president. And, it didn't work. And I think you can argue that it even arguably led to the JFK assassination. That's a whole nother story. But Nixon's plan in 1960 to use foreign policy to swing an election failed. But he tried it again in 1968. He blew up Lyndon Johnson's peace negotiations with South Vietnam. And, you've heard the clips of that. In fact, no, I don't have it on my 360 here. You've heard the clips of that, and it's just, this is, where Everett Dirksen, where Lyndon Johnson says to Everett Dirksen, I don't want to get this in the election, but I can see what they're doing. I'm reading their hand here, Everett, and they shouldn't be doing this. This is treason. And Everett Dirksen says, yeah, I know. It's treason. That was 1968, Richard Nixon. He came to office using treason. Then Ronald Reagan did it in 1980. By cutting a deal with his campaign, cutting a deal with the Ayatollah Khomeini to hang on to the hostages over the objections of President Jimmy Carter and Iranian President Bani Sadr, who had worked out a deal to get the hostages freed. But the Reagan campaign said to Khomeini, you hang on to the hostages and I'll sell you weapons for your American military, because they had American planes and all of their weaponry was American made because of the Shah. And they needed spare parts and they needed ammunition. And so Reagan in 1980 commits treason in order to become president, or at least the Reagan campaign does. That leads us to George Herbert Walker Bush, who lied us into the war in Iraq by having, this woman testify before Congress that the Iraqi soldiers in Kuwait were throwing babies out of incubators. It was a lie. But, Bush got his little war. It didn't get him reelected. But Bush didn't believe in democracy either. Then we got George W. Bush. George W. Bush was put into office by 5 Republicans on the U.S. Supreme Court. 4 of those 5 Republicans had been put into the Supreme Court by Nixon or Reagan before that, right? And I mean, this is just nuts, right? And when the New York Times and the Washington Post and USA Today and the Associated Press, this consortium, did an analysis of the election, counted all the ballots in Florida a year later, in November of 2001, a year after the election, what they found was that by any measure, if you actually counted all the ballots in the state, Al Gore won Florida. And of course, Al Gore beat George W. Bush by 500,000 votes, but Antonin Scalia had said that, we're going to stop the recount in Florida and we're just going to award the presidency to George W. Bush. The Supreme Court gave him the White House. And then Donald Trump colluded with the Russians to become president. So here we have a series of illegitimate Republican presidents. And in my opinion, this is what set up what's going on right now, the Republican embrace of oligarchy and fascism. It's been an incremental process, step by step, all the way from Nixon to Reagan to both Bushes to Trump. And it's leading in the direction of DeSantis in 2024. I mean, this is the direction things are moving, is let's elect a fascist Republican president. And I'm, shall we say, substantially concerned about this. I think it's also time that we just say out loud what appears to be absolutely true, which is that by and large, the Republican Party has ceased to be an honest political party in the United States, a party that makes genuine, credible arguments for things, and has become basically a criminal conspiracy to hold power and to enrich itself and to enrich its members. And we see this right across the board. We saw this morning in this testimony, where Andy Biggs comes out and says, no, Republican Congressman Andy Biggs, I'm not even going to go to the hearing where these people are testifying because I'm owned by the gun industry. You got the fossil fuel industry owning these Republicans who all claim that there's no such thing as global warming. This is how bad the bribery problem is in America. A rant that I'm going to go into in more detail tomorrow on this program, so stick around for that.